Throughout the history of Call of Duty, the responsibility of game development has been shared across multiple studios. Initially, development alternated exclusively between Infinity Ward and Treyarch. The previous video in this series explores how the God Mode glitch works within Infinity Ward's Call of Duty, namely the original Modern Warfare 3 and Ghosts. In this video, I would like to take a look at how the God Mode glitch arose independently within Treyarch's Call of Duty. More specifically, I would like to answer the question, how is it that in the first 3 Black Ops games, an oversight in the programming logic allows us to achieve the one thing we should never be able to do? Become invincible. Before getting into the underlying mechanics, we will first take a look at how to perform the God Mode glitch for those who are unfamiliar with it. Since it originated in Black Ops 1, that is the game I will use to demonstrate it. First, you need to set the game mode to Free for All, and make sure you have a tactical insertion equipped. Within the Killstreak editor, set RCXD to 1 kill and Valkyrie rockets to 2. If you want God Mode to last forever, disable the RCXD timer. Spawn in, get a Valkyrie rocket and place your tactical insertion next to an enemy. Next, fire the rocket, change to spectator and change back to your original team. Finally, get a kill so that you receive an RCXD and then call it in. Once the Valkyrie rocket explodes, you will be taken out of both kill streaks and become invincible. Players will not be able to shoot you, and death barriers will have no effect. But why does this happen? What do the RCXD and Valkyrie missile have to do with it? And why do we need to switch to spectator? To answer these questions, we must first look ahead to a more recent Call of Duty. Although the God Mode glitch was introduced in Black Ops 1, it was first discovered in 2013 within Black Ops 2. Over the course of that year, Treyarch attempted to patch the glitch numerous times and failed numerous times. One afterpatch in particular was so simple it could easily be done in public matches. Given its simplicity, understanding how this version of God Mode is executed will get us closer to the heart of the problem by isolating its core components. First, you need to set your score streaks to the AGR and Hellstorm missile, then acquire both of them. After calling in the AGR, wait until the option to use it appears. Once it does, hold square and switch weapons immediately after. If you get the timing right, you will not be able to use your equipment. Finally, all you need to do is use the Hellstorm as you normally would. This will place you in your AGR whilst also controlling the Hellstorm. After the Hellstorm crashes, you will be taken out of the AGR and become invincible. Once again, players will not be able to shoot you and death barriers will have no effect. So what does this tell us about God Mode? It tells us that switching to spectator cannot be the cause of invincibility, because it is not necessary in Black Ops 2. God Mode has nothing to do with the player dying. So what is actually causing God Mode here? Based on the common steps between the two games, there appears to be one key factor. That is, being in 2 kill streaks simultaneously and having one end. But how could this be? Kill streaks do not inherently make players invulnerable, so how does being in 2 of them at once change anything? Where does the invincibility come from? To answer these questions, we must go back. Back to the last Call of Duty to not have player-controlled kill streaks. Despite not having player-controlled streaks, Call of Duty World at War contains a feature that can alter the player state in a similar way. A handful of maps offer controllable tanks that players can then use to feel like they're actually good at the game. Each tank has 2 seats. The first seat places the player inside, allowing them to fire the cannon and drive. The second seat places the player on the exterior, allowing them to operate the mounted turret. As a realistic military simulator, it would make sense that the player sitting inside of the tank would be protected by multiple inches of steel. However, in Call of Duty there is never a guarantee that a wall will block a bullet, no matter how thick it may be. Because of this, the developers of World at War were afraid the player inside of the tank might get 360 wall-bang no-scoped from across the map, so they decided to grant the player inside of the tank temporary invincibility. Upon entering the driver's seat, the game sets an attribute called Player is Driver to true. This marks the player as currently operating a tank and triggers a special case in the damage handling system. Whenever a player takes damage, the game runs a function to determine how that damage should be applied. If Player is Driver is true, the game ignores the incoming damage entirely. This invincibility remains in effect until either the player exits the tank or the tank itself is destroyed, at which point the player is ejected. Player is Driver is set to false, and the player is killed. But what does any of this have to do with Killstreaks? The first 3 Black Ops games don't even have tanks in multiplayer. Or do they? After the introduction of player-controlled killstreaks in Modern Warfare 2, Treyarch felt compelled to include a similar feature in Black Ops 1. But what exactly is a player-controlled killstreak? At its core, it's simply an alternative player state. That is, controlling something other than a soldier. In this case, vehicles. Treyarch already had a vehicle system in place with the tanks from World at War, which they themselves likely evolved from earlier games in the series. So instead of starting from scratch, they simply continued to adapt the existing code. There are 4 player-controlled killstreaks in Black Ops 1. The RCXD, Valkyrie rockets, chopper gunner, and gunship. While all 4 are technically player-controlled, they can be divided into 2 distinct categories. With the Valkyrie rocket or chopper gunner, the player is merely along for the ride. They control aspects like aiming and firing, but not the full movement of the vehicle. In contrast, the RCXD and gunship grant full control. The player can move forwards, backwards, left, and right. In other words, the RCXD and gunship are drivable, whereas the Valkyrie rocket and chopper gunner are non-drivable. When the player enters a drivable kill streak, the Player is Driver attribute is set to true. However, this creates a problem. Even though there are no tanks in Black Ops, the Player is Driver attribute still exists, and it still grants invulnerability. Unlike tanks, where the player is physically inside and should be shielded from damage, kill streak vehicles are remotely operated, meaning the player should remain vulnerable. So what did Treyarch do to prevent kill streak users from becoming invincible? Rather than overhaul the entire system, Treyarch solved this by introducing a secondary attribute called is remote controlling, which signifies that the player is currently operating a kill streak remotely. This attribute applies to both drivable and non-drivable kill streaks. Inside the damage function, the following decision tree unfolds. When a player is about to take damage, the game first checks whether they're driving. If they're not, the damage is applied immediately. If they are, the game performs a second check. Is the player remote controlling? If yes, it means they're using a kill streak and the damage is applied. If not, there is only one time when this could ever be the case. The player must be driving a tank. But once again, there is a problem. Because of how this logic is structured, we don't need to actually be in a tank to receive invincibility. We just need to make the game think that we're using a kill streak without remote controlling it. We now have all of the knowledge needed to piece together how the God mode glitch works. Let's take an in-depth, step-by-step look at everything that happens when the player performs the God mode glitch in Black Ops 1. To help visualize things as we go along, I have created this table. The first column represents whether or not the player is driving, the second column represents whether or not the player is remote controlling, and the third column represents the outcome after the player takes damage in each state. When the player spawns in, both player is driver and is remote controlling are false. The player is in the default state and will therefore take damage as expected. After firing the Valkyrie rocket, is remote controlling is set to true. Since the Valkyrie rocket is a non-drivable kill streak, only the remote attribute is set. Upon switching to spectator and then back to the original team, the attribute doesn't change. The game still considers the player to be remotely controlling the Valkyrie rocket. However, now the control lock has been disabled, allowing the player to call in another kill streak. After receiving an RCXD, the player calls it in. Since the RCXD is a drivable kill streak, both player is driver and is remote controlling are set to true. The player is now in 2 kill streaks at once. As soon as the Valkyrie rocket crashes, the code to end the kill streak and put the player back in their body is run. The same code that pushes the player out of the Valkyrie rocket also pushes them out of the RCXD, allowing them to move around freely. Since the Valkyrie rocket is a non-drivable kill streak, it doesn't care about player is driver. It only sets is remote controlling back to false. At this point, the player is driving the RCXD without remote controlling it. According to Treyarch's code, if the player is driving a vehicle and they are not remotely controlling it, then it must be a tank. And when a player is inside a tank, they cannot be killed. The player has achieved the one thing you should never be able to do in Call of Duty. They have become invincible. The first 3 Black Ops games contain an oversight in their programming that allows players to become invincible. After years of speculation, we finally understand how and why it happens. The God mode glitch exists because kill streaks in Black Ops were built on the foundation of tanks from World at War. The preventative measure of ensuring that the player driving the tank wasn't killed remained in place as the game evolved, until the mechanics around it shifted just enough and in just the right way to create one of the most game-breaking exploits in the history of Call of Duty.